Where is God? By Arthur E. Leakey, Chapter 2. God's First Answer to Modern Man. What is the first and most fundamental answer for the man uncertain in a fog of fearful doubt? What does God say to one struggling with skepticism born of disappointment and disillusionment? What word does he have for him who has reached the outpost of unbelief, or who may stand on the verge of open rebellion, or who may have the floodgates of sorrow and disaster opened upon him? What is God's answer to any man who says sincerely, God, where art thou? Is it that oft repeated statement, the fool hath said in his heart, there is no God? Psalms 14:1. True as this statement is, it scarcely is the answer for the troubled mind of a sincere man. It was not given for that purpose. It might easily prove to be the push that would send a harassed soul over the precipice to utter ruin. This is not God's way. God's answer is simple. It is a strange challenge to a kind of action that seems almost like no action at all. He who disregards it will be utterly inexcusable. He who heeds it in sincerity will discover life's priceless pearl. Here it is. Be still and know that I am God. Psalms 46:10. What a challenge. If these be the words of God, they place him under simple test by every sincere person who seeks to know him. Would God disappoint a man at the very first door he asks the man to open? These words, be still and know that I am God, give the one piece of vital counsel in that entire memorable and beloved refuge psalm, which has been the source of hope to millions for millenniums. It is found in the next to last verse, in fact. The remainder of the psalm is given over almost entirely to a description of the eternal refuge. The path to that refuge begins at the point where man's confidence in himself ends, and where God can get him to be still and listen. The din of the now. Never has it been so hard to listen. Never in the history of the world has there been such widespread din and confusion, rush and hustle and bustle. Though the pace was never swifter, the end is not yet. Man's genius is harnessed to plans set to give the world more leisure to live faster motor cars, ships, planes, and trains, faster tanks, bullets, and bombs, faster education, transportation, and communication, faster everything. The story is told of an earthly visitor at the gate of heaven. Said the attending angel, how did you enjoy God's beautiful world during your days on earth? The man replied, I didn't get a chance to see much of it. I was too busy telephoning and everything. The friend at the modern roadside. Alongside this modern roaring speedway of life on which civilization is rolling at an ever increasing speed, stands man's best friend, God. He knows that man's machine is hurtling on toward utter tragedy because man's fuel of faith is burning up and his moral bearings are burning out. To every traveler, God says, be still and know that I am God. Every truly great man who ever lived took time out to listen to God. Abraham listened, and God said, I will bless thee. Genesis 26:3. Jacob, fleeing for his life, listened to the lonely night under the stars and heard a voice from the top of the majestic mystic ladder saying, I am with thee and will keep thee in all places whither thou goest. Genesis 28:15. That was just the message he needed. George Washington listened at Valley Forge and heard that still small voice. Lincoln listened in the White House chambers, and God sent hope in hours of darkness and despair. God is man's best friend at every roadside and lane of every life. A sick man argues. One of the sickest men who ever got well was a man named Job. He was sick from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head, sick all over, outside and all through inside, sick physically and spiritually. In the time of his illness, Job had visits from 4 earthly friends: Eliphaz, Bildad, Zophar, and Elihu. These prominent citizens of their day fell into a long and almost bitter argument over the matter of the meaning of trouble and the question of God's dealing with men. Job contended that inasmuch as he had been a just and kind man, therefore God was unfair and unjust in allowing him to suffer dread sickness that was now nigh unto death. Furthermore, he insisted that God would no longer hear his prayers, and he pleaded for the opportunity to speak with God. He said, I would order my cause before him and fill my mouth with arguments. I would know the true words which he would answer me. Job 23:4-5. So desperate was Job that he was ready to debate with God, and was fully convinced that before his array of arguments, God would stand speechless. How easy it is for man to become wiser than the God in whom he actually believes. Eliphaz the Temanite got at the matter something like this: Job, you have been noted for your earnest admonition to others in their time of trouble. But when you get down flat on your own back, you cannot take your own medicine. The fact is, God is punishing you because of some wickedness. So do not despise his chastening. And remember, too, that we are wiser in these matters than you, because our hair is gray. You yet have much to learn. Bildad the Shuhite took the positive approach. Job, if you would only do right, you would prosper. Job 8:6. The inference was, of course, that Job had been doing things in secret, in which the world knew not. Having sores on his body from head to foot, he was open to considerable suspicion. Zophar the Naamathite pushed a probe a little deeper with the idea, you really deserve more punishment than you are receiving. Such sins as you evidently have committed ought to bring down upon you a greater wrath. Know therefore that God exacteth of thee less than thine iniquity deserveth. Job 11:6. Poor Job. He fought back, embittered by their insinuations, and flung in their teeth such statements as, no doubt, but you are the people, and wisdom shall die with you. I am not inferior to you. It remained for young Elihu the Buzite to finish off the argument in a burst of wrath against both Job and the three friends, against Job because he had sought to justify himself rather than God, and against the three old men because they had failed to answer Job wisely. It may be said that Elihu's lengthy speech, which stopped his elders in their tracks, had considerable wisdom. Among other things, he said, He, God, looketh upon men, and if any say, I have sinned and perverted that which is right, he will deliver his soul, and his life shall see the light. Job 33:27-28. Also he added, if they obey and serve him, they shall spend their days in prosperity. Job 36:11. Where all these men failed. In the total words spoken by these men, there were both truth and untruth. Job's friends were wrong when they insisted that his disease came upon him as a punishment for his personal wickedness, and that prosperity is a sign of righteousness. Disease may be the result of one's own sin, or it may not be. Job made the mistake of charging God with injustice and probably about overestimating his own attainments. He did not have all the facts or fully understand them. He did not have the long view or the whole view. But all these searchers for truth made a yet a greater mistake. It was much greater in practical significance than were their theological errors and differences of opinion. After all, these men were good moral characters, as men go, contending for what they thought to be right. What was their real mistake? They had been more ready to express their opinions about God than to let God express his opinions to them. In their zeal to outtalk each other, they had failed God. They had talked God out. God's turn comes. All contenders finally run out of argument, and the greatest filibuster collapses. So it was with these men discussing God and men's troubles. They finally gave God a chance above argument and complaint, suffering, and bitterness. Addressing his message, particularly to Job, God said, "Who is this that darkeneth the counsel by words without knowledge? Gird up now thy loins like a man, for I will demand of thee, and answer thou me." Job 38, 2 and 3. God then spoke of creation, the earth, air, and sky, day and night, snow, hail, light, thunder, lightning, rain, ice and frost, stars and clouds, lions, wild goats, deer, and horses in battle, peacocks, hawks, eagles, whales, and elephants, etc., concerning which the high school boy and girl of today know more than God revealed to Job. Yet when God gave Job a chance to answer, the sick, spent, and bitter man replied, "I will lay my hand upon my mouth." Forgotten were his labored arguments and all his planned speeches, long before Jesus was to say, "He that hath ear, let him hear." Matthew 11:15. Job discovered his ears, and he listened to the voice of God. When God had finally finished, it was with these words: "He, God, is a king over all the children of pride." It was then that Job answered, "I know that thou canst do everything, and that no thought can be withholden from thee. Wherefore I abhor myself and repent in dust and ashes." Job 42, 2 and 6. Two things to remember about Job. The first is that when Job stopped arguing and complaining, either verbally or inwardly, and listened attentively to the voice of God, even as he revealed in nature, he found his God again. The second thing to remember is that according to this record, God gave to Job no explanation concerning the matter of the relationship of his disease to punishment, nor did Job ask for any information. Job had closed his mouth in silence, opened his heart to heaven, and found his personal God. This God himself became the personal answer to his distressing personal problem. There is no other satisfactory solution. It is not so much theology about God as it is fellowship with God, knowing God. This is life eternal, that they might know thee, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom thou hast sent. John 17:3. The man who had it straight. The Apostle Paul might well have said, "Where is God? Why does he not shield me from false friends? Why does he not safeguard me from religious enemies? Why does he not keep me from prison, protect me from floggings, heal my diseases, and reverse the decisions of Emperor Nero? Why does he not hold back my neck from the headsman's hatchet?" 3 times did he beseech God to take away physical affliction. His God answered, "No," but added, "My grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness." Paul approached God no more on this matter, but wrote, "Most gladly, therefore, will I rather glory in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me." 2 Corinthians 12:9. Back of this submission and affliction, and interwoven with it like the shuttle thread to the warp and woof of the woven cloth, was a golden thread of faith, expressed in his mature manhood thus: "Nevertheless, I am not ashamed, for I know whom I have believed." 2 Timothy 1:12. It is one thing to believe in God. It is another thing to know God. Paul knew God. When God spoke, he listened and heeded. That is why, standing on the very shadow of his executioner, he could say, "I am now ready. I have fought. I have finished. I have kept the faith. Henceforth there is a crown." 2 Timothy 4, 6 through 8. Here was a man powerful in pulpit or prison, victorious in life or death, the philosopher and the mechanic. The richest man in the world of his day is said to have asked the wisest man of the time for an explanation of God. For days and days the philosopher studied, but the more he thought, the more confused he became. Said he, I cannot frame an answer. He had the frame, but he did not have the picture. The religious leader, Tertullian, is reported to have said, there is the wisest man in the world, and he cannot tell you who God is. But the most ignorant mechanic among the Christians knows God, and is able to make him known unto others. God does not ask a man to find him only by deep study of his nature and plans. Canst thou by searching find out God? Job 11:7. God does not ask men to be still. To them he says, still thy words, still thy prejudice, still thy preconceived opinions. For a moment, still thy pride, thy arrogancy, thy rebellion, and I will speak with thee. Look unto me and be ye saved. Isaiah 45:22. Come unto me, and I will give you rest. Matthew 11:28. Commit thy way unto the Lord. Psalms 37:5. Lo, I am with you always. Matthew 28:20. This simple approach does not serve to settle all questions or to bring complete understanding, but it is God's beginning for every man. The night that Aaron Burr flung open the shutters of his window at Princeton University and shouted, Goodbye, God, he closed the door of his soul. He who today will open wide the shutters of his soul to God will find the light of God's presence shining in.